Crystal Palace 1, Arsenal 5, back-to-back wins against Crystal Palace, and this time it's at Selhurst Park. Selhurst Park is one of those stadiums which is a bit of a bogey team, especially away from home for a lot of clubs, because the atmosphere in Selhurst Park is absolutely electric. And if you are able to win at Selhurst Park, and if you're able to win away against teams like Newcastle, then you're on good track, essentially. And for Arsenal to dominate the way that they have against Crystal Palace was very, very good, and hopefully can continue with the next run of games that we have against Ipswich, Brighton, going on to Manchester United, and so on and so forth. What I could say about Gabriel Jesus, fantastic again. He scored 2 goals. Unfortunate not to get the hat-trick, but you know what? He had a lot of chances in the game in order to get the hat-trick, but he wasn't able to finish one of those properly, especially for the 3rd goal. But he got goals at a very key time, especially when we were 1-1 against Crystal Palace. I thought the defending between Gabriel and Saliba wasn't great. I think defensively we've regressed a bit, and we need to get up to those standards. I know Gabriel Magalhaes has come back from an injury, and he did get a good header which unfortunately hit the post, but I think as the games go on and Gabriel Magalhaes gets his fitness back and Saliba just gets a bit more used to the games, I think they'll be fine. I think in terms of left back, Mars Lewis-Skelly, once again, he's been very, very good. He looks very comfortable, which is something that I really like to see from players that come from Hale End and new youngsters that come through and play in the first team. If you look comfortable and if you look like your place is basically with the team, then I think that is a very good sign for Arsenal. And this is the thing with youngsters, they are players that you don't expect to come through and make a statement in the team. When they come through and make a statement, it just does so much for Arsenal and for any team in general. And to have Mars Lewis-Skelly and Ethan Nwaneri come into the team and to help out in certain scenarios, it's a very good thing. Overall, I don't have much to say other than the fact that it was a very comfortable 5-1 win. I think it's a good thing that Gabriel Jesus has scored 2 goals. Maybe he'll continue playing up front, or maybe he'll have to be put on the wings due to certain things that has happened in this game. I thought Kai Havertz in the midfield was okay. We didn't really learn anything new. I'm not comfortable with Kai Havertz being in the midfield because I just think he's better up top. Because in the midfield you need more runners, you need more legs and energy, and he just looks a little bit lazy to me when he plays in the midfield. And maybe that's just the way that he plays there. I mean, it's very similar to Ozil in terms of the work rate, if that makes sense. But he was able to get a goal, which is a very good thing, but I'm not sure long term, like as before, whether he's the answer for the midfield. But overall, I think the whole team did very well. It's good that Martinelli was able to get a goal, but we need to expect a lot more from him, especially with the certain things that have happened in this game. And also, like I said, as I will come to with Declan Rice, he came on and he was able to get a really good finish. And this is the difference when you have someone like Kai Havertz and when you have Declan Rice, you can see the difference in what they provide in the midfield. And Declan Rice was able to get a very good finish from it. So overall, it was a very good game. I think we're good on course against Ipswich, but the one very glaring error, and this is the thing, I'm making this video after a lot of thought because I looked at Bukayo Saka, and when he got his injury, it's very, very, very concerning for Arsenal because he's arguably Arsenal's best player. You can maybe put Odegaard or Saliba into that argument, or maybe Gabriel Magalhaes, but definitely on the offensive line. Offensively, in the front 3, he is the best player we have in our attack. And for him to go out on a hamstring injury is very, very alarming. And it's going to be interesting to see how Arsenal cope with it. And the good thing is that it's January, but the bad thing is it's January. So for Arsenal fans to expect anything to happen in the transfer window, we're going to have to wait and see. If history has taught us anything, it's to show that Arsenal don't really do much business in January. It has happened in the past with Aubameyang and Arshavin, and we even got Trossard in January. But whether or not Arsenal are going to be able to get a player that can play on the right wing or any of the wings is going to be a bit of a challenge. I think some people have said that Martinelli played well on the right wing, but the thing is that if you were to look at any team that tactically prepares itself against Arsenal, we all know that players from other teams double up on Saka and they really focus their players on him because he is Arsenal's best player essentially. So for him to come out and to put any other player on that right wing spot, it messes up the tactics for the other team. And I think that was a big factor on why we were able to dominate against Crystal Palace, because it just took the equation out of the fold. Because let's be honest, it's very rare that Mikel Arteta does sub off Saka, he usually keeps him on for the whole 90 minutes. And I'll get onto the injury in a little bit, but in terms of tactically in the game, it's kind of like how Portugal beat France in the Euros in the final when Cristiano Ronaldo came off and Eder came on. It changed the whole game because he was the focal point, and then once he came off, it caused problems for France tactically. So this was similar to how it was in this game, but we're going to see what happens when we play against Ipswich, when we play against Brighton. And based on Saka's hamstring injury, it looks like he will be out for between 6 to 12 weeks, 12 weeks if it's very, very bad. And the thing is with Arsenal, I feel bad for Arsenal fans and I feel bad for Saka, but I don't feel bad for Arsenal, because if we were to look at Arsenal in the whole grand scheme of things, look, Arsenal should have been prepared for this for a very, very long time. And for us to go into the season and not have an adequate backup for Saka is absolutely ridiculous. And for people that will come and tell me that Sterling was meant to be our backup, the thing is, Mikel Arteta doesn't even trust him, and we can all see that Sterling was just a signing just made for the sake of it. There wasn't any actual planning with it, and it wasn't something that was planned. So you could clearly see that that signing in itself was a mistake, and we're going to have to see what happens in January, whether or not we can do something with Sterling, maybe send him back and get someone else in, or find other players around in the market that could hopefully help Arsenal with their bench. Because I've seen a recent interview with Mikel Arteta, who clearly said that Arsenal have one of the thinnest squads in the league. But the thing is that when we went in the summer, we already knew how thin the squad was, especially last season when this was repeated again last February. So to go 9-10 months in and not address those problems is ridiculous. And it's similar to how we don't have a backup for Saka, we don't have a backup for Odegaard, and we don't even have an adequate backup for Raya, especially if something happens to him in the Carabao Cup, God forbid. So I don't have sympathy for Arsenal. I still expect them to do something in the January transfer window and to not use the summer as an excuse to say, oh yeah, we're going to do this or that in the summer. You should still do those things in the summer, but also have something readily available in January in case something's happened, because there's no better time than the present. And Patrice Evra was right about Arsenal in the way that Arsenal always look for next season. And as fans shouldn't be caught up in this, because this isn't something that's been new to Arsenal. This has been something that's been going on since the Wenger era, and it's just things that are repeated over and over again. And with Mikel Arteta's recent interview, I am a bit concerned with the fact that I want him to challenge the Kroenkes more, especially behind the scenes. I know that the Kroenkes have backed him at certain important moments in his career, but it's now high time that Arteta gets those trophies and gets ready for crunch time, which we are in, and really demand more from them in terms of the backing that he needs. And here's the thing, I know a lot of people have been crying about Isak and Gyökeres and Kvaratskhelia and all these other great fantastic players. I would love all of these players. Are they all feasible in January? No. But the thing is that especially with Arsenal, with their recruitment, it's been very, very bad. And looking back on some of Edu's decisions, to spend 750 to 800 million between Arteta, Edu, Kroenkes, whoever you want to blame it on, they all fall under the same camp, and it's all their fault that Arsenal don't have an adequate bench that we can look at and say, you know what, we are sorted in every single position. Because to go through this season without an adequate backup to two of your best players in midfield and attack is absolutely ridiculous. And the thing is, with Saka's injury, it's fair to say that it's been due. I have especially been looking at this and saying, you know what, the way that Arsenal have been continuously playing Saka, running him into the ground, 250 games played, and he's only 23 years old, going up to 24 soon. It's ridiculous, because as good as a player that Saka is, you need to be able to rotate, and that's a big criticism I have of Mikel Arteta, and the fact that he doesn't rotate his squads enough, he doesn't rotate his players. And with Saka, he's always kept him on for 90 minutes, especially when games have been killed off. He never ever subs him off as much as he needs to. And the thing is that with the way that Mikel Arteta manages his players, he keeps certain players on longer than he needs to, and then when this sort of injury happens, we have to just hold our hands up, because this was something that was expected, and this was something that Mikel Arteta should have dealt with better. Yeah, you can blame it on international football and tournaments and this and that, but there are certain things you can do as a manager that can prevent these sorts of problems happening on the field. You could have played Sterling a bit more. Last season, you could have put on Nelson when it came to 70-80 minutes, but the thing is that he didn't do that. And now this isn't something that just magically happened this season. This has been going on for a very, very long time. And the only other player that has played that many minutes at this age in the Premier League in the past was Eden Hazard, and we all saw what happened to him. He's literally retired at 31 years old, and that's why a lot of people look at Saka and say, yeah, he's probably going to retire at a very early age. I don't want that to happen to him. I want other players to come in and provide a challenge to Bukayo Saka, but also give him the rest when it's needed. But the fact is that if Mikel Arteta is literally burning through how many left backs, and he's burning through these wingers, and he's not giving them an opportunity, and he doesn't trust them, you have to ask questions on the recruitment. And I'm not saying that Arsenal should go and get Isak and Kvara and Gyökeres and all these guys in January. I'd love Arsenal to do that, but the thing is, as a club, if you can't do that, then go for the next best available option. Go for some cheap options. Go for some players that are young, impressionable, that can fight for that place. Essentially, they don't have to cost hundreds of millions, but you can't come to fans and say, oh yeah, you can't spend a little 20-30 million here and there, especially when your net spend last summer was literally negative 20 million, especially with the players that was sold and bought. So that's the biggest gripe I have with Arsenal, the fact that if it's not absolutely perfect, they don't go for them, which is pathetic, because you're not going to be able to get every player like that. And you don't need every player like that, especially with on the bench. You don't need a player that plays multiple 20 different positions. Sometimes you just need a player that plays as backup to that position in which you need it for, essentially. As is in a squad, it's great that we have players that play multiple positions, but you just need to have a team where you have your starting 11, and then behind that starting 11 you have a player that, okay, if this player gets injured, then you have someone that can come in. So that is why you have a squad of 25 players, 11 players that you start with, 11 players that are backup, and then 3 extra players that can come in and out of the team, essentially, like an extra goalkeeper, an extra midfielder, defender, or attacker, right? And that is the biggest thing that I want to see from Arsenal in this transfer window, and any transfer window, especially when it comes to the summer, when it comes to January. Because the thing is that, especially when Wenger was managing Arsenal, there were players that we bought that came from absolutely nowhere, right? And we bought them for very, very cheap prices, but they were able to do so much for Arsenal and provide us with what we needed to do in the league. I mean, Nasri comes to mind, Alex Song, Van Persie. There's lots of players that were just that just came out of nowhere and were names that we didn't find. And that's the thing that I look at Arsenal and their scouting system. Why aren't we able to find those gems? And why can't we find adequate replacement or backup to the starting 11 with all this money being spent? So it's absolutely ridiculous, and that's why I have to criticize this recruitment and this management heavily. And I don't have any sympathy for Arsenal in that way, because this is something that's been going on for a long time and they haven't addressed it. And as fans, unfortunately, there are some that just will look at this and say, you know what, next year or next season we can go into the summer and expect this and that. But no, there's no better time than the present. And next season there may be different factors that happen. Maybe someone else will get injured, and then what? Just focus on what you have now, improve on what you have now, forget about the future. Because if you continuously go down this path, which Arsenal have been going down, then you're never ever going to be able to win anything. And this has been the thing that's been going on with Arsenal for God knows how long, since the Kroenkes have arrived. So yeah, that is the game, and that is what's going on with Bukayo Saka. Hopefully he's able to come back and play ASAP, but the thing is that I don't want him to be rushed back, because that will just cause more injury issues in the future. And Mikel Arteta has to put faith and has to find a way to deal with Bukayo Saka's injury, because if he just rushes him back in the season, then that's going to cause way more problems down the line, and that's just going to show more naivety from his management at Arsenal Football Club. So hopefully he gets better. If it has to take 12 weeks, then whatever, it takes 12 weeks and he comes back in March or April, whatever. But I look at this team and I see a lot of players that this current regime of Arteta, Edu, that have bought him, and even if Saka gets injured, or even if Odegaard gets injured, the rest of these players need to step up. I'm looking at Martinelli, I'm looking at Trossard, I'm looking at Havertz, I'm definitely looking at Gabriel Jesus and Martinelli especially, because they need to step up and provide more and cover for Arsenal in this period. But yeah, let's see how Arsenal do in the next couple of months. For me, honest opinion, I still don't think we're going to be able to win the league. I think that I'm not sure whether these players are going to step up, but we can only watch and see what happens. But yeah, that's the end of this video. Hope to see you all soon in the next video. Bye bye.